Hi, it's Ms. McGrath, and this lesson is on energy. Energy is the ability to do some kind of work, to cause something to move over a certain amount of distance because you're putting a force on it. And energy is always measured in joules. You use the letter capital J to indicate that you're talking about joules of energy. And 1 joule is equal to 1 kilograms times meters squared per second squared. And we'll talk more about what that means later. You'll see in a practice problem. So let's talk about the law of conservation of energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, simply changed from one form to another. So here's a perfect example. When you strike a match, you're using mechanical energy because there's movement. That match then combusts and it catches on fire. That's a chemical reaction. You're breaking bonds and it's releasing energy through that bonds. So you're taking mechanical energy, the energy of movement, and you turned it into chemical energy, or a chemical reaction. And then that match lighting produces heat in the air around it. And heat is thermal energy. We might see it as light, and it also is putting off heat because the particles are moving so quickly. And so you've converted that chemical energy into a thermal energy because it's actually providing a heat source. So let's talk about the different types of energy. You're going to be hearing a lot about these as we go through this section. Thermal energy is, like we just talked about, the movement of atoms, and as they move, the faster they move, the more heat they generate. You have mechanical energy, which is, if you think of something mechanical, it's moving. Mechanical energy just means any movement. So all the movement we do throughout the day, that's all mechanical energy too. Electrical energy is the movement of electrons, and they're creating electricity as they move. And we use electricity to power a lot of our appliances, so that's energy there. You have magnetic energy, which is caused by the pull of the magnet. And so it's got either north or south pole, and it will pull on something that's oppositely charged and draw it closer to itself. So it's creating movement, kinetic energy, as it pulls that other magnet or paper clip or whatever it is towards it. Sound energy is also kinetic energy because it causes a disruption in the particles in the air, and as it travels through the air, I should say, and that's what your ear picks up when it strikes your eardrum. So sound energy is kinetic energy because it's movement of particles or a disturbance as it travels across. And light energy is similar, can be thermal energy. There can be heat with it. They can be paired together, but not always. So light energy is partly what we see, visible light. It's a wavelength that travels through the air, and when it hits our retinas, we see it as colors, but there's lots of light outside of that. We'll talk about that later as well. Potential energy is energy that is not moving. So this is energy that's stored. It's ready to do something, but it's not doing anything yet. There's no movement with it. And so chemical energy, which we saw on our last screen, is that energy that's stored between bonds. It's ready. As soon as you break those bonds and cause a chemical reaction, it's either going to release energy or take it in, and it changes form back into kinetic energy. But in the meantime, while it's stored, it's chemical energy. Elastic energy results from when you, like with a rubber band or a spring, when it's pulled away from its resting position, there's energy there. It's being held, and as soon as you let go of that spring, it's going to snap back together, right? Or as soon as you release that rubber band that you've aimed across the room, it's going to go flying because there's energy stored in that stretch. Nuclear energy is a little different. It's similar to chemical energy, but it's referring specifically to nuclear fission and nuclear fusion, which is how nuclear power plants work, and also how the sun creates its energy. So until that reaction actually goes through, it is storing energy in those compounds that are waiting to break down. And last but not least is gravitational energy, and this is an energy that holds us all on Earth, but it is the pull of the Earth's gravity on an object that's not moving. So once it starts moving, once the ball drops from your hand, we switch over to mechanical energy, and it's kinetic because it's actually in motion. Gravitational would be you holding the ball up there, ready to drop it, but not dropping it yet. So you have the pull of the earth on that ball, which means as soon as you let it go, it's got energy that it's going to start releasing as kinetic. But until you let it go, it's storing that energy as potential. So you've heard me mention kinetic energy and potential energy. There's a couple formulas that you'll want to jot down. Again, energy that's kinetic is in motion, so there's some kind of movement associated with it. And we calculate kinetic energy, or KE, with this formula. It's 1/2 times the mass of the object that's moving times the velocity squared of the object that's moving. So the more you speed up an object, or the heavier it is, as you increase either of these, you're going to have to increase your kinetic energy, or your energy of movement. Potential energy is talking about the energy that's stored, like we were saying, and we calculate potential energy, or PE, by multiplying the mass times the force of gravity pulling on something times the height at which it's held away from the Earth. And so the higher you hold something, the more the pull of Earth affects it, and so you're going to be increasing your potential energy that way. The other way to look at it, if we're not talking about gravity, but there is some force here, is then we're looking at shape. And so if we're talking a spring or rubber band that you would stretch away from its resting position, the farther you stretch it, the more potential energy it holds to snap back together. It's important for you to note to write down your notebooks that gravity, the standard acceleration of gravity on Earth, is 9.8 meters per second squared. And pardon my typo, that should be a squared, but it's 9.8 meters per second squared everywhere on Earth. Doesn't matter if you're at altitude or down at ocean level. It never changes. The only way it would change is if you went to another planet, or the moon, I suppose. So let's talk about kinetic energy, and we'll do a couple practice problems. So again, here's that very important formula. Write this down. You're going to need it. And here we go. So quickly quiz yourself. Which of these two objects do you think would have the most moving or the most kinetic energy? Our bus or our smart car? If you said the bus, you are correct, because the bus has more mass. So as we increase the mass of the object, we need more energy to move it. If we decrease the mass, if we have a smaller item, it takes less energy. And this makes sense if you've ever tried to lift a small object versus a large object. The larger thing is going to be harder to lift, right? You need more energy for your mechanical energy. You need more input to actually lift that object. So the other part of that formula, we have mass times velocity squared. Velocity is talking about the rate at which an object is moving in a direction. And so we often talk about driving at a certain speed. Let's say we're going 45 miles per hour. What that means is if we were to drive at that speed for a whole hour, we would move a distance of 45 miles. That's speed. In order to change it to velocity, we have to say what direction we're going. If we're driving 45 miles per hour north, let's say we're going to Wyoming, in an hour we would move 45 miles closer to Wyoming. Our velocity could change, but our speed can stay the same. We could say we're going 45 miles per hour south. We're headed down to Denver. And with an hour, we would be 45 miles closer to Denver. So velocity always takes into effect the direction. However, you're not always going to be given the direction. Oftentimes you'll just be given the speed. And unless it says that you moved, for 20 minutes in one direction and then you reversed and went a different direction, speed and velocity can be semi-interchangeable. And you'll see what I mean when we do some practice problems. So here's the important relationship between mass and kinetic energy. As you increase mass, you're going to increase the amount of kinetic energy you need. So as you increase the size of the thing that you're lifting or moving, you're increasing its weight, right? Because gravity's pulling on it. So you're going to need more energy. Same thing if you decrease the mass, so you made the item smaller or lighter because of gravitational pull, then you're going to need less energy. And so we say that mass and kinetic energy have a direct relationship. And so smaller, lighter stuff is going to take very little energy to lift, but as we start to increase that mass, our kinetic energy increases. So they're directly related. You can't increase one without increasing the other, and you can't decrease one without decreasing the other. So how does speed affect this? Is it the same? It's not quite. So if you look at these two images, which one do you think has more moving energy, more kinetic energy? Hopefully you chose the person sprinting. They're moving faster, they're covering more distance in less time. So more speed does equal kinetic energy, but it is not the same relationship we saw before. So if you increase speed, you're going to increase kinetic energy squared, because remember our velocity, it was mass times velocity squared. So you're actually going to exponentially increase your kinetic energy if you increase the speed. And same thing if you decrease it. You're going to decrease it exponentially. So you're going to reduce it a lot faster than you would if you're reducing the mass. So let's take a look at this. As speed starts to increase, notice it's not just a straight line as the other graph was. We start to get a faster and faster and faster increase in our kinetic energy. And so our kinetic energy is increasing exponentially because velocity is squared as part of that formula. So just keep that in mind. If you can't say, oh, if I increase kinetic energy by 10, it's because my speed increased by 10. It's not as directly related as that. You have to square them. So, very small things can have a lot of kinetic energy. Perfect example here, firing a ping pong ball at a paddle. I'm sure nobody has ever played ping pong and actually had the ball go straight through their paddle, but this ping pong ball is moving at an exceptionally high speed. So even though it's a teeny tiny little mass, if you've ever held a ping pong ball, it's like there's nothing there almost, right? It's mostly air. But even though it's a really small mass, if it's moving fast enough, it can actually go through the paddle. All right, let's do a practice problem. So go ahead and write this down in your notes. Feel free to pause me to make sure you can solve it on your own. And then press resume when you're ready to hear the answer. The fastest human foot speed on record was 12.42 meters per second, seen by Usain Bolt during the 100 meters sprint. If Usain Bolt had a mass of 94 kilograms, what was his kinetic energy during his run? So go ahead, press pause, try and solve this using the formula that we had before, and press play when you're ready for the answer. All right, so you should have used the KE equals 1/2 mass times velocity squared formula, which means we would set it up with K equals 1/2 of 94 kilograms, because that's his mass, if you remember our metric units. Multiply that by 12.42 meters per second, and we have to square it because that's what we do with velocity. So if we multiply, or if we square this, we end up with 94 kilograms times 154.2564 meters squared per second squared, because we squared all of this, right? And remember, joules equals kilograms times meters squared per second squared. So we multiply this all together and we get 7,250.0508 joules. What this turns into, because of significant digits, is 7,250. Because if you remember, with significant digits, we can only use the minimum that we have mentioned in the problem. So this shows us 4 significant digits, but this only shows us 2. And so we have to limit it to 2. So we get rid of our decimals. We can't get rid of any of these whole numbers, right? Because then our number would change from 7,250 to 725, and that's very different. But so that is your final answer, 7,250 joules. What I'd like you to do is go ahead and resume the notes. You can open this slide and continue on. There's one more practice problem. I'd like to see you do it on your own, check the answer, and contact me if you have any questions.